I was sitting at my desk, flipping through a book about ancient civilizations, when I first heard it, a strange hum, like a soft electric buzz. At first, I thought it was just the fridge kicking in, or maybe some wires short-circuiting, but then the air around me seemed to get heavier, almost like the world was pressing down just a little bit harder. The hum turned into a low, vibrating tone, and that's when I realized it was coming from outside. Now, I'd seen a lot of weird things in my life. I once saw a pigeon steal a whole sandwich off a park bench, while the guy who had made it was still sitting there. But this was something else entirely. I stood up from my chair, moved cautiously toward the window, and pulled the curtain back. The sight that greeted me wasn't exactly what I expected. It wasn't a spaceship with flashing lights or a glowing orb, but something even more bizarre. There, standing right outside, was a woman who didn't look anything like a human. Her skin shimmered in the sunlight, a soft lavender hue that looked almost like it was glowing from within. She was tall, really tall, at least 7 feet, with long limbs and an elegance to her movements that made her seem otherworldly. At first, I thought she was some kind of cosplayer. Maybe someone dressed up for a convention. But no, this wasn't a costume. This was something real. Her hair was a strange shade of silver, falling in loose waves that seemed to catch the light in all sorts of unnatural ways. Her eyes were golden, and they glowed softly, like tiny suns in the middle of her face. And to top it all off, she was standing perfectly still, staring directly at me through the window. It was like she knew I was looking. There was something in her gaze that made my heart race, something that felt both completely out of place and yet strangely familiar. "Hello," I said, my voice shaking a little. I was nervous. I wasn't sure what to say. It felt ridiculous to just stand there in silence, so I thought I should at least try to greet her. The woman didn't say anything at first. Instead, she made a small clicking sound with her mouth, like she was testing the air, or maybe listening to some kind of frequency I couldn't hear. Then she spoke, and her voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It was soft, almost melodic, like the hum of an electric current or the deep tone of a cello. "You are a strange species," she said. The way she spoke wasn't harsh. It was more like she was trying to make sense of something that was completely new to her. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Being called strange isn't something you hear every day, and it definitely wasn't something I was prepared for. But it wasn't like she was being rude. In fact, it seemed more like she was genuinely curious. Yeah, we're a little strange," I said, still trying to process the fact that I was talking to something that didn't belong here. "I mean, we're just regular humans, right? What do you mean by strange?" The alien woman tilted her head slightly, her golden eyes narrowing just a bit, as though she was examining me more closely. It made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I couldn't look away. There was something hypnotic about her gaze. "Your actions," she continued, "are inefficient. You perform tasks in ways that make no sense to an observer." "Oh, well, we're just doing our thing," I said, shrugging a little. I didn't know how else to explain it. "I mean, we have a lot of things that don't make sense. Like pizza. Why do we put pineapple on pizza? Nobody knows. It just works, somehow." The woman blinked slowly, her golden eyes flicking over my face, like she was trying to understand if I was joking or if I was completely serious. "Pizza," she repeated, her voice laced with genuine confusion. "Yeah, pizza. You know, dough, sauce, cheese, and whatever toppings you want," I explained, trying to sound casual. "Some people put pineapple on it, which seems weird to a lot of people, but there are a bunch of us who think it's actually kind of great." She stood there for a long moment, her eyes narrowing as though she was processing this new, completely illogical concept. Then she simply asked, "Does the pineapple make the pizza better?" I had to think about that for a second. Honestly, I don't know if it makes it better, but it's different. And sometimes, different is what makes things interesting. The woman hummed thoughtfully and took a step closer to the window. She seemed to be deeply analyzing the situation. Your species performs actions with no clear goal, no apparent logic, and yet you find satisfaction in it. Fascinating. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or be terrified. There I was standing in my living room, trying to explain the concept of pineapple on pizza to a 7-foot-tall alien, and she was studying me. It was like being under a microscope, but instead of a scientist, I had this otherworldly being scrutinizing every little thing I said. Okay, I get it, I said, scratching my head. Humans are a little weird, but that's what makes us fun. We're not all about logic and reason. Sometimes we do things just because they make us laugh or feel good. It's kind of our thing, you know. The alien woman's eyes flickered again, and this time she looked like she was trying to smile. But it was a strange smile, one that didn't quite reach her lips. I do not understand humor, she said slowly, like she was testing the words in her mind before speaking them aloud. Why would you make yourself laugh at things that are illogical? That's when I realized this was going to be an interesting conversation. This wasn't just some alien trying to understand Earth. This was an alien trying to understand humans. And apparently, she was starting with humor. Humor is, well, it's complicated, I said, leaning against the wall. We laugh at things that are unexpected or strange or just downright silly. You know, like, I paused, trying to think of a good example. Like when someone slips on a banana peel. It's not something anyone plans for, but when it happens, it's kind of funny. The alien woman blinked. You find it amusing when one of your kind falls due to a piece of fruit. Yep, I said, laughing a little. We're not happy that they fall, but it's funny how it happens. The surprise, the timing. It's just one of those things. Zara, I found out that was her name, looked at me in complete silence for a long moment. She raised a slender, metallic eyebrow. You are a perplexing species. You don't say, I replied, grinning. You've got to get used to it. Humans are pretty much a mix of everything. We're messy, we're inefficient, and we're often kind of silly, but we enjoy life, and sometimes that's enough to make it all work. She studied me for a while longer, her golden eyes scanning my face like she was trying to understand if I was joking, being sarcastic, or if I was genuinely trying to explain what made humans tick. Then she took a small step back. You amused me, human, she said, her voice calm and curious. Your species is unlike any I have encountered before. I wasn't sure whether to be flattered or concerned. But there was something in the way she said it that made me think. Maybe she wasn't just studying me as some kind of experiment. Maybe she was starting to see what made humans, well, us. The first few days after meeting Zara were strange, to say the least. I'd always assumed that if aliens ever visited Earth, they would be here for some grand, high-stakes mission. Maybe they wanted to take over the planet, or learn our secrets, or maybe they were just here for the food. But Zara, she wasn't like that at all. Instead of coming for world domination or a snack, she was here to study us. Specifically, me. It all started when she showed up at my door one afternoon, holding what I thought was a tablet, but it wasn't. It was some kind of device that glowed with a soft blue light, and it seemed to respond to her touch in a way that my phone never did. Hello, human, she said, her voice still carrying that strange musical quality. I have come to learn more about your species. I need a subject, and you are the chosen one. Chosen for what? I asked, my eyebrows furrowing. I'm just an average guy. You know, regular human, not really a scientist or anything. Zara tilted her head, her glowing golden eyes scanning me like I was some kind of rare artifact. Exactly. You are an unremarkable specimen, which makes you ideal for the study. You represent your species well. I wasn't sure if I should be flattered or worried. All right then, I said, stepping aside. Come on in. I guess this is happening. She entered my apartment with an air of purpose, almost like she was strolling through a museum. She didn't seem fazed by anything. The cluttered living room, the dishes that hadn't been washed in days, the laundry piling up in the corner. She seemed intrigued by it all. Zara sat down on my couch, folding her long legs neatly beneath her, her glowing skin casting a soft, almost ethereal light across the room. She looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for me to start the experiment. I didn't know what to do, so I shrugged. Okay, so what exactly do you want to know about humans? Zora didn't respond right away. Instead, she tapped her device, and it flickered to life, displaying a series of strange symbols and charts that made no sense to me. It wasn't like anything I had ever seen before. The symbols were complex, a mix of geometric shapes and flowing lines, and they seemed to shift and change in real time. After a few moments, Zura looked up at me. I would like to understand how your species functions. Your behavior is unpredictable, illogical, yet you seem to thrive on it. I couldn't help but laugh. Yeah, well, we're kind of like that. I mean, we don't always make sense, but we make it work, right? Zara nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. I wish to observe you. Your actions, your decisions. I will document everything. You will help me understand the human way of life. It sounded like a simple enough request, but after spending the next few days with Zora, I realized just how much I had underestimated what observing meant. The first day of observation. The next day, Zara came over again. This time, she had a list of questions that seemed to have been written in a language I didn't recognize. The strange symbols from her device appeared again, and she began reading the questions out loud, her golden eyes studying me intensely as she spoke. How do humans form relationships? She asked, holding her device close to her face. I blinked at her. Relationships? You mean like friendships? Friendships, romantic bonds, family connections. Your species is highly social. I have observed this. Right, I said. Well, humans form relationships through shared experiences. We spend time with people, talk to them, help each other out. Sometimes we argue. Sometimes we laugh. But in the end, we connect because we care about each other. Zara nodded, but I could tell she wasn't satisfied. So it is an emotional connection. I hesitated. Yes, it's an emotional connection, but it's also logical in a way. You connect with people who make your life better, who understand you. She didn't respond. Instead, she tapped her device again and made another note. I will need to observe this further. It was clear she wasn't going to stop until she understood everything about human relationships. So I spent the next hour explaining my friendships, my family, and how humans tend to be drawn to one another. After a while, Zara seemed to be absorbing the information, though I could tell she was still confused by it all. Zara tries to understand human rituals. The next part of the experiment involved Zora trying to understand our daily habits, our routines, our rituals, the little things that make us human. That's when I realized that she wasn't just observing me. She was trying to become a human. Why do you drink this? She asked, holding up my coffee mug. This liquid you call coffee. It is bitter. You consume it regularly. I stared at her for a moment, unsure of how to explain the magic of coffee. Well, it helps me wake up in the morning. It gives me energy. She studied the mug. But why not just rest to restore your energy? I couldn't help but chuckle. We do rest, but coffee makes it easier to wake up. It's like a little boost. It's not about being tired. It's more about the feeling it gives you. Zara raised an eyebrow. A feeling. Yeah, I said. Humans love feelings. We're all about them. A cup of coffee in the morning, a good conversation with a friend, the feeling of being in a cozy room on a rainy day. That's what makes life interesting. She didn't seem convinced, but she made another note on her device. Zara tries human humor. The next big experiment came when Zara decided to try humor. She had been watching a few of my favorite TV shows, trying to make sense of why we laugh at things that don't make any sense to an outsider. And that's when she came to me with the most ridiculous idea I'd ever heard. "I have decided to attempt humor," she said, her golden eyes gleaming. "I have observed that humor often involves making others believe one thing is true, then revealing that it is false. Is this accurate?" I nodded slowly, unsure of where this was going. "Yeah, that's a pretty basic way of putting it. Like a prank." Zara's face lit up with the kind of excitement you only see when someone is about to do something they think is a great idea. "I will prank you." "Okay," I said, bracing myself for whatever she was about to do. "Let's see what you've got." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, innocent-looking object. It was a whoopee cushion. I couldn't help but laugh. "You're going to prank me with a whoopee cushion?" She nodded. "I have seen humans use this to create a noise that mimics the sound of flatulence. This is an amusing sound, yes." I laughed again. "It's so ridiculous that it's funny. Go ahead. Try your prank." Zara carefully placed the whoopee cushion on my chair, then stood back, watching me like a hawk. When I sat down, the cushion made a loud, ridiculous fart noise, and Zara's eyes widened in excitement. "You did it," I said, laughing. "You pulled off a prank." Zara was quiet for a moment, her golden eyes glowing with curiosity. "That was the prank?" I nodded, still chuckling. "Yep, that's the prank. The sound is funny because it's unexpected, and everyone thinks it's a little embarrassing." Zara stood there, processing this for a long time. "I see," she said, tapping her device. "Humans laugh at these noises, even though they are unnatural." I couldn't help but laugh again. "Yeah, that's the whole point. It's so silly that it's funny." Zora blinked slowly. Fascinating. The realization. Over the next few days, Zara continued her experiment, observing my behavior, asking more questions, and even trying to mimic some of the quirky things that humans do. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something. Zara wasn't just studying us. She was learning from us. Every time she tried to understand a part of human life, she was discovering the beauty of the chaos that is being human. And in a way, I think she started to appreciate it. Humans might be strange, illogical, and messy, but we were also capable of so much joy, connection, and creativity. And as strange as it was to be the subject of an alien study, I couldn't help but feel a little proud. After all, if an alien thought we were worth studying, well, maybe we weren't as ordinary as we sometimes think. Zara had come to understand a lot about humans over the past few days, but there was one thing she just couldn't seem to grasp: humor. She had watched countless funny videos, listened to jokes, and even tried to understand the concept of irony, but it was like she was missing the secret ingredient. Every time I told a joke, Zara would tilt her head, blink those glowing golden eyes, and ask, "Why is that funny?" It became obvious that humor, the thing that made humans laugh and connect, was something Zara had yet to figure out. I knew I had to explain it better. After all, humor is a big part of what makes us human. If I could get Zara to understand humor, I'd be able to teach her something that humans take for granted: the ability to laugh, to find joy in the simplest things, and to connect over shared silliness. The next day, Zara arrived at my apartment as usual, but this time, she had something different in her hands. Instead of her glowing tablet or her usual assortment of strange gadgets, she was holding a large, colorful book. It looked like a children's book, but the way she was holding it suggested that she thought it was important. "What's that?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Zara held it up proudly. "This is a book I found. It is labeled Jokes for Humans. I believe it is a collection of humor that your species enjoys. I have studied it extensively." I tried to keep a straight face. "Okay, let's see what you've got." Zara sat down on my couch and flipped the book open to a random page. She cleared her throat, like a performer about to tell a story, and then began reading. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" I nodded, already knowing what was coming. I don't know. Why? To get to the other side, she said, deadpan, without even a hint of a smile. I stared at her for a moment, trying to figure out how to explain the joke. It was one of the oldest, simplest jokes in human history. A joke so basic that even a 5-year-old could get it. But Zara wasn't laughing. In fact, she didn't even seem to understand why it was funny. Okay, you've got to understand, I said, trying to be patient. The humor in this joke comes from the fact that the answer is so simple. People expect something complicated or clever, but the punchline is just straightforward. It's unexpected in its simplicity. Zara stared at me, her golden eyes flickering. But this is illogical. The chicken crosses the road to get to the other side. That is what a chicken would do. Why would anyone laugh? I scratched my head. Because it's so obvious, it's funny. It's like a surprise that isn't really a surprise. You don't expect it, and that's what makes it funny. Zora blinked a few times, clearly processing. I see, she said slowly. This makes no sense, but I will continue reading. She turned the page in the book and read another joke aloud. Why don't skeletons fight each other? I gave her a knowing look. I don't know. Why? Because they don't have the guts, she said, still in her serious, scientific tone. For a moment, there was silence. I wasn't sure if I should laugh or not. It was one of those cheesy, silly jokes that could either make you giggle or make you roll your eyes. But Zara wasn't laughing at all. She was staring at me, waiting for some sort of explanation. The humor here, I said, leaning back and trying to sound as serious as possible, comes from the wordplay. Guts means both courage and the actual organs inside your body. So, the skeleton can't fight because it doesn't have either. Zara tilted her head. You humans find this amusing. It is a simple play on words. Exactly. I said, smiling. Wordplay is a huge part of humor. It's like when something sounds like it means one thing, but ends up meaning something else. It's a little twist that makes it funny. Zora processed that for a moment, then turned the page again. This time, she seemed more determined to understand what was going on. Why did the bicycle fall over? She asked. I shrugged, expecting the punchline. I don't know. Why? Because it was too tired, she said, as if announcing a great discovery. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. It was silly, it was cheesy, and it was just the kind of dumb joke that made me chuckle every time. Zara looked at me like she was waiting for a deeper explanation, but all I could do was laugh harder. You see, I said between laughs, the joke is a pun. A bicycle has 2 tires, right? But too tired sounds like too tired, like it's exhausted. So it falls over because it's too tired. It's a play on words, and that's what makes it funny. Zara nodded slowly, but I could tell she still wasn't fully convinced. Humor was something that didn't follow logic, didn't make sense, and definitely wasn't always about being clever. It was about timing, delivery, and most importantly, not taking things too seriously. Humor is not always logical, is it? Zara asked, her golden eyes narrowing. It seems to be random, like the concept of chaos. Exactly, I said, pointing at her. Humor often comes from chaos. The unexpected. We laugh because something doesn't make sense, or it's so silly that we can't help but find it amusing. Zara was quiet for a long time, clearly deep in thought. So humor is about finding joy in illogical things. I grinned. You got it. It's about enjoying the nonsense, the ridiculousness of life. Sometimes things just don't make sense, but that's what makes them funny. It was clear that Zora still didn't fully understand, but she seemed to be getting closer. Maybe humor couldn't be explained through logic alone. It had to be experienced. After all, what's the fun in trying to explain a good joke? The point was to laugh at it, not to dissect it. Zora's attempt at humor. A few days later, Zora decided that if she couldn't fully understand humor, she would try to create some herself. She was determined to give it a shot. She came to my apartment, holding a small note in her hand, and with an air of excitement I hadn't seen before. "I have written my own joke," Zara said with confidence, her golden eyes bright. "All right," I said, leaning forward. "Let's hear it." She took a deep breath, as though preparing to deliver a great performance. "What do you call a group of planets that are always happy?" I frowned, trying to figure out the punchline. "I don't know." "What? A jovial system," she announced, smiling proudly. I blinked. I honestly didn't know what to say. "Wait, jovial? You mean like jovial as in happy?" Zara nodded, pleased with herself. "Yes, it is a play on the name of Jupiter. The planet is jovial, therefore, the system must be jovial." For a moment, I was silent. Then I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. It wasn't the funniest joke in the world, but it was clever in its own way. Zara had tried, and that effort made it funny in its own right. "You know what?" I said, wiping tears from my eyes. "It's actually pretty good. You've got the idea. The wordplay is solid." Zara stood up straighter, clearly proud of herself. "I have created humor. This is a great achievement." I smiled, realizing that Zara was starting to get it. Humor wasn't about being perfect. It was about trying, about finding the fun in the absurd, and about enjoying the silliness of life. Even though Zara had come to study humans, I was starting to see that we had taught her something important. Humor wasn't just a human trait. It was a universal way to connect, to laugh at the chaos, and to celebrate life's little joys. Zara had always been curious, and I quickly realized that her curiosity wasn't just about human behavior. It was about everything. Every little detail seemed to fascinate her. From the way I folded a piece of paper to how I brushed my teeth, Zara was eager to know why humans did everything we did. At first, I thought it was just a phase. I assumed she was only curious about the basics, our food, our entertainment, our customs. But over time, it became clear that her curiosity went deeper. She didn't just want to learn about the surface-level things. She wanted to understand how humans thought, how we felt, and most importantly, how we lived. One evening, she showed up at my apartment holding a notebook, her eyes wide with excitement. "I've been thinking," she said, pacing back and forth, "about the way humans experience time. You seem to have a unique relationship with it." I raised an eyebrow. "Time? What do you mean?" Zara stopped pacing and turned to me, her golden eyes glowing brighter than usual. "You measure your lives by time. You have seconds, minutes, hours, days. You plan everything around time. But your relationship with it is strange. Sometimes you rush to the future. Other times you dwell on the past. Why do you do this?" I thought for a moment. "Well, we're always thinking about time because it's something we can't control. We live in the present, but we're always planning ahead, worrying about what's coming next. Or sometimes we think about the past, about memories, things that have already happened." Zara looked thoughtful, writing down some notes. "It's like you're always chasing something. Why don't you just exist in the present moment, like your animal companions?" I smiled, shaking my head. Humans have a unique way of thinking. We're always looking forward, and sometimes that can make us anxious or excited. But we also think about our past because it helps us understand who we are. We learn from it. Zara's glowing eyes dimmed slightly, as if she was trying to process this new information. "I see. So you think about your past to learn, but you also worry about your future." "Exactly," I said. "It's part of being human. It's kind of like, well, I guess it's what makes us different from other creatures. We can reflect and anticipate." Zara nodded slowly, clearly fascinated. But she wasn't done yet. Her curiosity had only just begun to dig deeper. Zara's exploration of human emotions. The next day, Zara came over once again, her notebook in hand, her eyes full of questions. "Today, I want to know about your emotions. I have observed that humans have many emotions, and they seem to influence everything you do. Why do you feel things so intensely? I took a deep breath. This was a big question. How could I explain the complexity of human emotions to an alien who didn't seem to have any of her own? It was a challenge, but I was up for it. Well, emotions are part of what makes us human, I began, and they can be pretty overwhelming sometimes. We feel happiness, sadness, anger, excitement, fear, and so many others. And those emotions affect our actions, our decisions, and even how we treat each other. Zara tilted her head. But if emotions control your decisions, doesn't that make your actions unpredictable? I thought about it for a moment. Yeah, emotions can make us unpredictable. But that's also what makes us so interesting. We're not robots. We don't just do things based on logic or calculations. We act based on how we feel. And sometimes that leads us to do amazing things. Things we couldn't have predicted. Zora's eyes sparkled as she began writing furiously in her notebook. So, humans are driven by feelings rather than logic. But doesn't that create chaos? Chaos? Maybe. But that's where the beauty of it comes in, I explained. We might make mistakes, or do things that don't always make sense, but we also experience joy, love, and connection in ways that a purely logical being might never understand. Zora paused, her eyes narrowing as she thought. Love, she said slowly. I have observed this concept, but I do not fully understand it. What is love? I laughed, knowing this question was coming. Love is complicated. It's hard to explain, but it's something that binds us together. It's more than just affection or attraction. It's a deep connection to someone, wanting what's best for them, caring for them even when things are tough. Zora's golden eyes looked confused, but I could tell she was trying to understand. So, you love others because it makes you feel good. Partly, I said, but love is also about sacrifice. Sometimes, you love someone so much that you put their needs above your own. And that can make you feel vulnerable. Zara wrote down a few more notes, but I could tell she wasn't satisfied. She wanted to know more about how love affected humans, so I decided to give her a real-life example. Zara observes love. I invited Zora to come with me to meet my friends the next weekend. I figured if she wanted to learn more about human emotions, she should see them in action. Maybe seeing how love and friendship worked between humans would give her a better idea of what I meant. When Zara showed up at my apartment, I introduced her to my friends, Lena, Mark, and Jake. They were all curious about the alien I'd been hanging out with, and I could see they were excited to meet Zara. Hey Zara, Mark said with a grin. You've been learning a lot about humans, right? What's the most interesting thing you've learned so far? Zora's eyes glowed as she began speaking. Humans are unpredictable. You make decisions based on feelings, and sometimes you do things that do not make logical sense. But I have also observed something else. The way you care for one another. The concept of friendship, of supporting each other, is fascinating. Lena smiled warmly. Yeah, we look out for each other. We're there when things get tough. Zara nodded, still writing in her notebook. But what makes you care for someone? What makes you choose to protect them? Well, it's different for everyone, I said, but I think it has to do with trust. You trust someone, and that builds a connection. Over time, you learn to care for them more and more. Zara's gaze shifted between each of us, as if trying to understand the bonds we shared. I see. So humans create these emotional connections to strengthen their relationships. Exactly, Mark said. But it's not always easy. Sometimes relationships are tested by difficult situations. People fight, misunderstand each other, and hurt each other. But in the end, love and friendship help us heal. Zora's eyes glowed brighter as she listened to us talk about our experiences. She was taking it all in, processing the emotional complexity that humans often experienced. I could tell she was beginning to understand. But it wasn't easy for her. It was hard for an alien to grasp the messiness of human emotions, but I could see she was starting to appreciate it. Curiosity leads to self-discovery. As the days went on, Zora's curiosity continued to grow, and so did her understanding of humans. It wasn't just about learning facts anymore. It was about understanding why we did things the way we did, and how our emotions, relationships, and choices defined us. But then, one day, Zara showed up at my apartment in a rare state of silence. She didn't have her notebook. She didn't ask any questions. Instead, she just sat on my couch and stared out the window, lost in thought. "Hey, Zara," I said, sitting down beside her. "What's on your mind?" She turned to me, her glowing eyes reflecting a hint of confusion. "I have been thinking about something. I have learned so much about humans, about emotions, relationships, and your strange obsession with time. But now I wonder." She paused, as if struggling to find the words. "Now I wonder if I will ever truly understand you." I smiled softly. "Zara, I don't think any of us can fully understand each other. We're all a little bit mysterious, even to ourselves. That's what makes life interesting." Zara seemed to ponder this for a long time. "You are right. I may never fully understand, but that is not the point, is it?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "The point is that we're curious, that we ask questions, and that we keep learning. And in the end, that's what makes us who we are." Zara nodded slowly, her golden eyes softening with a new understanding. "I think I understand now," she said. "Curiosity is not just about finding answers. It's about the journey, the exploration itself." As Zara looked out the window again, I realized that in her own way, she had learned one of the most important lessons of all. Life was about embracing the unknown, about always questioning, and about never being afraid to explore what lies beyond our understanding. It was a bright, sunny Saturday when Zara asked me the question that I never expected. "Can we go to the wilderness?" At first, I wasn't sure what she meant. She'd learned so much about human culture by now. She understood our cities, our technology, and even how we communicate. But I hadn't taken her into the wild before, and I wasn't entirely sure how she would react to the raw, untamed parts of Earth. "You're talking about going into nature?" I asked, trying to clarify. "Yes," Zara responded, her golden eyes glowing with excitement. "I have seen pictures of forests, mountains, and rivers on your information networks. I wish to understand how humans interact with nature. Do you find it peaceful?" I smiled. "You could say that. Many humans find peace in nature, but others find it overwhelming or even dangerous." Her eyes glinted with curiosity. "Dangerous?" she asked. "How so?" "Well," I started, "nature is wild. It's unpredictable. Animals, the weather, even the plants. Everything has a way of surprising you. But that's what makes it so amazing. There's something about being out there that makes you feel alive." Zara seemed to consider this carefully. "I wish to experience this unpredictability. I want to see for myself what makes your species seek nature despite its dangers." "Okay," I said, laughing slightly. "I think it's time for you to meet the wild side of Earth. First encounter with nature." I took Zora to a nearby forest, a place I often visited to unwind and get away from the bustle of the city. It wasn't the deepest part of the wilderness, but it was perfect for a first experience. The trees were tall and old, their leaves rustling in the wind. Birds flew from branch to branch, and the air smelled fresh and earthy, with the hint of pine and moss. As soon as we stepped into the forest, Zora's eyes widened. She stood still, as if trying to absorb every detail. I had never seen her so still. She seemed to be overwhelmed by the vibrant sounds and sights around her. "Is this real?" Zara asked, her voice filled with awe. "This is wild." I chuckled. "Yep, this is what we call nature. No city noise, no artificial lights, just the natural world." She reached out and touched a tree's bark. "It is rough. I expected it to be smooth." She looked at me, as if expecting an explanation. "Well, trees grow in different ways," I explained. The rough texture helps them stay strong. Over time, as trees age, their bark gets thicker to protect them. Zara nodded slowly, then squatted down and examined the ground. This ground is different from your buildings. It is soft, but also firm. How do you know what is safe to walk on?